Hello, everybody, and welcome back to The Heartbeat, your daily Inter Miami podcast. And today we are talking about tonight's game against Toronto FC. This is going to be our preview, checking out what Toronto's all about. And in the second half, I will give my lineup preview for tonight's game, what I think Tata Martino is going to do. And we'll talk through some of the decisions that have to be made. Before we do, though, I just want to touch on the fact that it's been a big 24 hours for Inter Miami. Yesterday in particular was a lot of Inter Miami news, all sort of back to back to back. And I will be spending some time on this show talking about some of what we learned yesterday. David Martinez from River Plate looks like he's going to be the center back replacement for Nico Freire. We'll touch on that. There's the third kit launched yesterday, and I know people were shouting and screaming about it for the last 8 months, but now that it's finally here, I think it looks pretty good. We got an update on Messi's injury. Leo Campana got a new hairstyle, and then Emerson Rodriguez formalized his move to Vasco da Gama, which I had mentioned on here before, but has finally gone through officially. He technically was on Inter Miami's roster for the last couple of days, and so Inter Miami needed to make that happen so that they were roster compliant for this game tonight against Toronto. So that's official. I will spend more time talking about David Martinez in the coming days, and probably more time talking about Lionel Messi. But for now, this is the Toronto preview, and the only thing that really matters is Lionel Messi won't be available. Tata Martino had some quotes yesterday in the morning talking about how he doesn't think it's as serious as it looked, but that he's definitely going to miss the next two MLS games, and then they're going to take it from there. So again, I'll get more into the update later in the week, but for now, Messi unavailable for tonight's game. Let's talk about John Herman's Toronto FC. They've been in bad form. I don't know what else to say. They were a team that looked like they were potentially in that second tier in the East, and now they're very much in the fighting for a playoff spot tier. Currently, they are 8th in the East with 27 points, but 18th in the Supporter Shield table. So among MLS teams, not particularly good. The lowdown is they give up way too many goals, and they don't score that many. They've scored 32 goals in 24 games, and they've allowed 44. So their defense worse than Miami's, and on a game-to-game basis, I think significantly worse than Inter Miami's. They've been in a really bad form lately, and so maybe we should start there. In their last 11 games, they've won only one, and that was this past weekend against Philadelphia, who's in even worse shape than Toronto. Philadelphia is completely fallen off a cliff over the last couple months. But prior to that, they had lost 8 of their last 10. They were winless in 10, and including 7 straight losses. So, and not against powerhouse teams, although they did play some good teams in there, and they got beat up pretty badly by the best teams in the East when they played them. The other 3 best teams in the East, at least in my opinion, Cincinnati, the New York Red Bulls, and Columbus, all did a number on this Toronto FC team. Toronto lost to Cincinnati 4-3. The New York Red Bulls put up 3 on Toronto in a 3-0 victory, and then Columbus put up 4 in a 4-0 victory. Both of those games, the Red Bulls and Columbus game, were they were on the road for Toronto, which is, of course, what tonight's game is going to be at Chase Stadium. And so if you're Inter Miami, you know you are a really good offensive team. You know that you are a team that can put up goals in bunches. You should be looking at those games at the New York Red Bulls and at Columbus, where Toronto went scoreless and they gave up a bunch of goals, and thinking this is the blueprint for tonight. Like I said, they did win this past weekend against Philadelphia in a 2-1 victory, but A, Philadelphia is really struggling, and B, they got an own goal from Jack Elliott, or they received an own goal from Jack Elliott. And so that 2-1 scoreline might even be a little kind to them, because they actually got outshot, out XG'd, and were kind of gifted an own goal by Elliott. So it's not been a good run of form for Toronto. They had a really bad start. They were okay for a little while, and then they've been awful for months now. And if you're a Toronto fan, you got to be feeling pretty poorly coming into this game. In their defense, over the last 7 games, they were without some key players for the Copa America. Their goalkeeper, Sean Johnson, went to the Copa America with the U.S. men's national team as the third goalkeeper, and so he missed a number of games. And then they were missing Jonathan Osorio, who is one of their most important midfielders, and we'll talk about him a little bit more. And they were also missing Richie Larea. Both Osorio and Larea were with the Canadian men's national team, and so they missed all the way up until today. Sean Johnson has gone back to Toronto for the last couple games. But Osorio and Richie Larea have been gone since the beginning of June because they were with the Canadian men's national team. Larea hasn't played much this season, so we'll see how he integrates into this team for the first time. I believe he only played one game with Toronto prior to going to the Copa America. He just sort of got himself healthy for the Copa America game. And then Osorio, who's been a fundamental piece in the midfield, both are coming back. Like I said, Larea hasn't played a ton for them this season, but is going to be a weapon for them, and he's sort of a wing back for them. How do they play? Well, they play mostly with the back three, especially of late. Sometimes a 3-4-3, sometimes a 3-5-2, but basically they play with the wing backs, and they like to play balls over the top, and they like to get in behind teams. And so if you're thinking about how are they going to beat this Inter Miami team, that's probably the first place to look, because they try and take advantage of speed mismatches. They try and get the ball in behind and then run under it and create opportunities that way. And Inter Miami doesn't have the fastest pair of center backs in the league, as we know, especially what we saw last game against Cincinnati. Fortunately, we won't have a Busquets and Kristoff lineup in this game, but that's basically what it is. They rely on their two stars, and we'll talk about the key players in a minute, but it's a real go for them. And if they can get it going, it works. And if they can't, it can look pretty ugly. They have two players missing today. They have a midfielder named Alonso Coelho, who has been actually a nice surprise for them this season, I think. They have not they won't have him. He's injured. But he's been solid for them in the midfield this season. And then Tyrese Spicer, who's a really highly thought of young player. He was the first or second pick in the super draft this past winter, but he's out for this game as well. Kind of a winger, wide player, wing back type player. So no Tyrese Spicer, no Alonso Coelho. As I mentioned, Osorio and Larea, they were both with the Canadian men's national team, and I'm not exactly clear what the plan is for them. That team played on Saturday, and so it would be a quick turnaround for them to come back from that third place game against Uruguay to this game. But it is an important game, and so we'll see what the plan is with John Herdman and those players, because they have played a lot lately, and they just played on Saturday. But I would expect both of them to go. As far as important players to keep in mind, obviously the two big names, Federico Bernardeschi and Lorenzo Insigne. Bernardeschi has been really good this year, especially lately. He's been the most troublesome player on their team in terms of causing trouble for the opposition. He's got 8 goals and 4 assists on the season. Like I said, they mostly play in a 3-4-3, 3-5-2 style, and so you would expect to see him as a wingback, but he's very much a get forward and score goals type of wide player, not a defensive juggernaut by any means. He's going to get forward and make plays. And then on the other side, you got Lorenzo Insigne, similar player. If they go with the 3-4-3, he'll probably mostly be a left winger. But these are the two big names, right? A couple years ago, they made big waves when they signed Bernardeschi and Insigne from Juventus, from Napoli. These were guys that were supposed to come in and rock the league and help Toronto have the most potent offense in the league. And while that hasn't happened, I think they are having their best seasons since coming to the MLS, particularly Bernardeschi, but Insigne as well. They've both been in really good form this year. Insigne with 4 goals and 4 assists in 16 games. Not played quite every game, but again, he's been solid. And those two players are the type of quality players that if you give them an opportunity or a moment, they can take advantage of it in a way that not everyone in this league can. So those are the two names to watch out for them in terms of the danger men. Prince Ose Oswusu is their target man. He's got 6 goals on the year. He's their big striker. I would expect him to play up front for them. He's a big guy, and Inter Miami's done a good job of handling him this year. Let's put it that way. So if you're Inter Miami, you should feel good about being able to contain their striker. And really, it's just a matter of Insigne and Bernardeschi, and can you lock those guys down, or not give up a ton of chances to them. I mentioned Jonathan Osorio. He's been their midfielder, middle of the park type player. He's been really solid this year, has had some positive and negative games, but it was clear when he was gone that they really missed him. So they should welcome him back into the lineup tonight, and they'll be better off for it. A couple other names to mention: Richie Larea. Again, he was just at the Copa America with Canada, but he's a player that has been impactful in this league in the past. He hasn't really played this year, and they got a new coach in the offseason, so we'll see how Larea fits into the picture, but tonight could really be a new moment for him. Jaquil Marshall-Ruddy, I know he's a big, exciting prospect in Canadian youth circles, so we'll see what he's about. I think he's sort of like a winger, wide player, wing back in this system, so we'll see what he's about, but he's a guy that has gotten some publicity over the years. And then our old friend Amy Mabika has been playing for them, and like I said, they play in a back three. Amy Mabika, big, tall center back, good in the air. So our old friend will be likely on the pitch tonight at Chase Stadium. So let's talk about Inter Miami. The two big things that I think you want to think about if you're Inter Miami are redemption for a beatdown. I know it's been a week and a half, but remember the last time this team took the field, they lost 6-1 to Cincinnati, and Drake Callender didn't light himself ablaze with glory, and Sergio Busquets got himself kicked out in the 61st minute. And we got embarrassed in a really big game of the week type moment. And so can they come out and get redemption quickly? The last time that they got beat down like that or embarrassed like that, I think, was on that road trip to Monterrey. And they came back and won 7 of 8 games and really put it behind them right away. But the first time they did it, it was that trip to the New York Red Bulls where they gave up 4. They lost 4-0, and they really struggled for the next month. So we'll see how this team responds. But I think getting back into winning ways is really important, and I want to see them do that right away. And then, as I mentioned, Toronto, when they've played the big boys in the East, the New York Red Bulls, Columbus, Cincinnati, they've given up a lot of goals, and especially on the road, they've really struggled to score goals. So if you're Inter Miami, you got to be thinking this is an opportunity to win 2-3-4-0, 2-3-4, 3-1, 4-1. Put up a big number, get this game out of the way early, come out and establish yourself early in the first half, and make this the type of moment where you put this game out of the way before halftime. Don't give Toronto anything to count on. Don't give Toronto anything to feel confident about going into the half. Put this game away early and just do it and get it out. Get it out of the way. As far as the lineup, we've got 4 players that are officially unavailable. Lionel Messi, as we talked about, injured, has that ankle injury. Benjamin Kramaski already with the U.S. Olympic team, so we won't see him again until after the Olympics. And then Sergio Busquets got the red card against Cincinnati, and I believe Chelo Wigan is suspended for this game. He got his 5th yellow card in that game against Cincinnati. So I believe Inter Miami will be without Chelo Wigan tonight as well. And then, of course, the long-term injury guys, Facundo Farias and Nico Frede. And so in goal, obviously Drake Callender, easy. Jordi Alba comes back into the lineup after his suspension. He missed that Cincinnati game because of yellow card accumulation. He goes right back into the starting lineup, no problem. Because Chelo Wigan is unavailable, I think Ian Frey is going to pop in at right back, and I'm excited to see what he can do there because I feel really confident with Ian Frey. I will say those two are more attacking options as fullbacks, and I expect both of them to get up the field relatively liberally. But Toronto's biggest threats come from those wide areas, and so we'll have to see how those two can handle Bernardeschi and Insigne in this game. At center back, no Busquets. Ian Frey's playing on the right, so I think it's an obvious partnership of Toto Aviles and Sergei Christoph. Relatively simple to put together. We'll see how long those guys stay together because it does sound like Inter Miami is going to bring in a center back over the next couple of days, and the window opens tomorrow. So if that David Martinez move can happen real quick, not for Saturday's game, but over the next week and a week or so, we could see a new center back come to the top of that list. In the midfield, no Busquets, no Kramaski. And so I think it has to be Yannick Bright. And then I will say there's a little bit of a question mark in my mind about Federico Redondo and Diego Gomez. Like I said, Benjamin Kramaski already with the U.S. Olympic team. So I'm not sure when Federico Redondo and Diego Gomez are going to make that move to the Olympics. But as far as I can tell, there's no reason to think they're not going to be available for tonight's game. And so I think they both start with Yannick Bright behind them. No Busquets, so add Bright as your true number 6. Redondo and Diego Gomez ahead of him. And Julian Gressel, I think you have to put back in the right wing spot. So when you put Julian Gressel at right wing, it kind of becomes easy and obvious to start Redondo, Gomez, and Yannick Bright, in my opinion. David Ruiz also there, but I just don't think this is the game for him. And then up front, Julian Gressel, this is the big question for me. Julian Gressel has been really good as a right winger, and he's taken over that spot since Messi left. But if we rewound back to when the Copa America rosters were announced, we thought that Matías Rojas was going to be the right winger for this last month. And instead, he got called up to Paraguay. And so Inter Miami went with Julian Gressel, and Gressel was great. But I am curious to see if Tata Martino goes right to having Matías Rojas as a right winger, or if he sticks with Julian Gressel there. Listen, he's very loyal to Julian Gressel, and so I just feel like he's going to put him at right winger, but it wouldn't absolutely shock me if Julian Gressel ends up in the midfield tonight and Matías Rojas is the starting right winger. And then on the other side, you have the same question with Robert Taylor and Matías Rojas. I think he's going to go with Robert Taylor, but again, it wouldn't shock me if it was Matías Rojas. And then the last question is at striker. Luis Suarez played for Uruguay on Saturday. Campana's had an 11-day rest. Do you give Campana one more game? Do you give Suarez 60 minutes to get his legs under him and then bring Campana on? I think we're going to go right back with Luis Suarez. So my expectation is Inter Miami will start calendar, a backline of Jordi Alba, Toto Avila, Sergej Kristoff, Ian Frey, a midfield of Yannick Bright, Federico Redondo, and Diego Gomez, and then Robert Taylor, Luis Suarez, and Julian Gressel up front. I am a little worried about this front three if it's Suarez over Campana in terms of pressing and starting the defense from the front. That's been something Inter Miami's done very effectively over the last month and a half, and they won't really be able to do that with Luis Suarez. So I'm interested in how that's going to play out, but it's Luis Suarez and you're getting the goals back. So you got to take that for all the money that it's worth. Guys, I will be back tonight live for the pregame show on the Drive Pink Dialogues YouTube channel. So I encourage you to come check that out. It's the hour before kickoff. We do it every game. It's, a preview, our score predictions, have some fun, answer some questions in the chat. Just a nice way to get the nerves off before the game starts. And other than that, guys, it's been a lot of fun. And as always, I will see you tomorrow. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I hope Inter Miami gets 3 points. See you guys tomorrow.